shirt, get on the ground! Over here! On the ground! On the ground!
For Mario Julian, it was a different kind of impact. The frustration of witnessing injustice, and the struggle to hold someone accountable. As for Officer Dukes, his actions ultimately cost him his position, and may cost him much more. Because in today's world, body cameras don't just capture events, they reveal truth. And when that truth doesn't align with the story being told, the consequences are unavoidable. So what can we take away from this? That compliance does not always guarantee safety. That accountability requires persistence. And that justice is not automatic. It must be pursued, examined, and demanded. This has been Street Justice Files, where every case tells a story, and every story brings us closer to understanding the truth. But beyond the legal outcomes, this case raises deeper questions about training, about decision-making under pressure, and about the culture within law enforcement. Because while one officer's actions are under scrutiny, others on the scene also play a role. Some support the narrative, some question it, and one, in particular, stands out. Sergeant Patter. Calm, measured, professional. She provides accurate information, corrects misinformation, and helps ensure the situation is handled properly. In moments like these, integrity matters, and her actions reflect the kind of accountability that is often missing in similar cases. Unfortunately, not every officer follows that path. In fact, it's not uncommon to see misconduct overlooked, excused, or even defended. In this very incident, another officer initially praises the use of force before fully understanding what happened. A reminder of how quickly narratives can form and how important it is to question them. At its core, this case is about more than one moment. It's about the balance between authority and responsibility, the line between control and excessive force, and the reality that even a few seconds of poor judgment can have lasting consequences. For Clarence Gillard, those consequences were physical pain, injury, and the trauma of an encounter that escalated unnecessarily. A disability. But his words are dismissed. "You weren't listening," the officer responds. But was that really the case? Or was this a failure of patience? A failure of judgment? Or something more? Meanwhile, Mario Julian watches, concerned, confused, and trying to understand what just happened. He asks questions. He seeks answers. And most importantly, he asks for accountability. He requests the officer's identification. A simple request. A reasonable request. But Officer Dukes refuses. He claims they don't issue cards. A statement that is immediately contradicted by a supervising officer who steps in and provides the information. It's a small moment, but a telling one, because accountability often begins with transparency. Legally speaking, this moment introduces another layer of concern. If an officer intentionally provides false information to avoid accountability, it can cross into criminal territory, obstruction of justice, official misconduct. While this specific lie may not meet the highest threshold, it reflects a pattern of inconsistency, evasion, and questionable conduct. In the days that follow, the consequences begin to unfold. After receiving medical attention, Gillard and Julian are released. But the incident doesn't end there. 2 days later, Officer Dukes is fired. The reason? Violation of department use of force policies. Then comes the criminal charge. First-degree assault and battery. A charge that carries serious penalties and signals just how severe this incident may have been. To understand whether this use of force was justified, we turn to the law. In the landmark Supreme Court case Graham v. Connor, the standard is clear. Police use of force must be objectively reasonable, based on the circumstances. 3 key factors must be considered: the severity of the alleged crime, whether the suspect poses an immediate threat, and whether the individual is resisting or attempting to flee. So how does this situation measure up? The alleged crime, unclear at best. There is no confirmed weapon, no visible threat, and most importantly, No resistance. Gallard was complying. Slowly, carefully, but clearly complying. Yet force was used anyway. And not just minimal force, but a level strong enough to drive a man's head into concrete, Officer Dukes later claims. He believed Gallard had a gun. He says he issued commands to drop the weapon. But the body camera footage tells a different story. At no point is a gun visible. At no point do we clearly hear commands to drop the gun. Instead, we see raised hands, we hear repeated orders to get on the ground, and we witness a man trying to follow them. Other reports from officers on the scene add even more inconsistency. One report suggests Gallard had his hands in his pockets, briefly. Another confirms his hands were visible. And then, there's the most troubling detail. The method of force itself. Was he pushed? Or was he stomped? One report claims Officer Dukes placed his foot on Gallard's back. Another states he jumped and stomped on the back of his neck. The footage leaves room for interpretation. But one thing is certain. The force was severe. And the explanation doesn't match the evidence. As the situation unfolds, Gallard can be heard in pain. He repeatedly says his head was slammed. He explains he has a prior injury. Welcome to Street Justice Files, where we break down the truth behind police encounters, separating fact from fiction and justice from misconduct. Tonight's case is disturbing, complex, and raises serious questions about the use of force, accountability, and the limits of authority. It begins on July 26, 2021. A quiet residential parking lot, an ordinary day, suddenly interrupted. Without warning, Officer David Lance Dukes arrives on scene and within seconds escalates the situation to a dangerous level. His weapon is drawn. His commands are loud, aggressive, and immediate. Two men stand in the parking lot, 58-year-old Clarence Gallard, a disabled individual, and his cousin, Mario Julian. Neither appears to be threatening. Neither appears to be armed. But that doesn't stop what happens next. Get on the ground, the officer shouts repeatedly. The tension builds rapidly. Gallard, visibly confused, begins to comply. He raises his hands. He lowers himself down. He follows instructions. But before he can fully get onto the ground, everything changes. In a sudden and forceful movement, Officer Dukes uses his foot to drive Gallard down. His head slams violently into the pavement. A moment that lasts only seconds, but carries consequences far beyond.